So, hello and welcome everyone to this final episode in the Unreal Lighting Academy for this little art quiz project here. First of all, I really have to apologize to all of you, um, and I will have to apologize multiple times here. So, first of all, really sorry that it took me so long to finally end this session. It has been a quite a ride the past months to say the least. Finishing the project and also quite a lot of other things happening as well. And the computer broke down, and I got help from the community to actually fix the computer, and then I just didn't have any time. And sadly, I also lost data for this project, which is very unfortunate because I basically lost all the progress that we had during the sessions together. And you might also notice that my voice is a little bit weird. And yeah, that is uh, something I cannot really change. I'm sorry, but yeah, I just had a rough time recently a little bit, and also was a little bit sick. So yeah, my voice is not the best right now. However, I think it should be decent enough so you can understand me without getting a headache or something like that. So yeah, here we are with the Arquist project, and just to tell you how this is gonna go down. Um, so I took the raw data from the project and I kind of reworked what we did in the past sessions, and I kind of like just it has been such a long time since we worked on that scene, and I also have a new and very great scene in the pipeline. I really, after such a long time, I felt like, you know what, I just need to wrap this up as quickly as I can, also to stay motivated for myself. So, sadly, this last session is not gonna be a one-to-one, like, this is what we do thing. It's more like, okay, so look, that is where we were the last time. I finished the scene up, and now I'm gonna just explain to you, and to bridge the gap of what I actually did. Because yeah, I this won't be an hour video, it will be quite a bit shorter, and I just really want to wrap this up and show you guys a couple of like moves that I did, a couple of tricks and so on. And yeah, then I would like to close that off, and I'm gonna have a small tease for you so you know what you can expect in the future. So first of all, here's some like old screens that I still found somewhere laying around on how all that kind of like progressed. So you might remember this is what we had in the beginning with this scene, what I kind of got. Um, yeah, so just a couple of other angles here. And then we started reworking quite a bit. We started adding a new HDR lighting. We started turning like these bottom lights off here. We removed decals. We started doing quite a few things here. I also touched the materials of the wood here, quite a few things. And so, like after some rework, we kind of like started getting towards something like this. You can see, I mean, it still has obviously issues here. Um, and that was only the skylighting, so there's also no sun and all that. And we slowly progressed towards something like this, where we, for the first time, we were like working with the bake quality. We're like trying to get like a really nice bake quality going. Um, I also want to say something like I don't have a full final bake quality for the scene right now, but it's good enough for what we need to do. So you can see here are a couple of spots that are actually cleaner than what I will show you in a minute. But I'm going to explain to why that is and how you work around it. So that was basically one of the first really good bakes that we got out of like optimizing the scene. You can see like back here we get like some really nice lighting coming through. We get like these directional shadows and the little spotlights here from the indirect lighting coming through the windows. It's a very good bake here actually. It's very nice looking. Um, And so we kind of like had something that was more like this at some point. So you could just see how it is all coming together. You can also see, in my opinion, how bad the floor still is because that material just doesn't really work, in my opinion. It just makes everything look very, very gamey, even though the overall appearance of the image is a lot nicer than before. You can see we also changed the wood material here, and I think now we're back to the beginning with these shots. Yeah. Okay, so let's look at what we actually have now. So this is the scene how I have it now. By the way, you notice that the SSR are a lot less noisy than they had been in some other instances, and that is actually what I meant. You might remember me saying that I updated the engine and suddenly like all the SSR were super noisy, and we're like, why is that so noisy? It hasn't been like that before. And just so you know, I updated the whole scene to 4.18. So we get the new skylight, we get the multi-bounce skylight out of the box now, we get the skylight actually being encoded into cube map for baking, which increases the directionality and all the detail from the skylighting. So there's a couple of cool additions in here that we are using, and also the SSR look way better and way smoother and more like they actually kind of like should look. Um, so yeah, that is the scene and how it looks now. So I think you can already see like we can make some really, really nice shots here. I balanced out the spotlights. I also re-enabled these light elements down here in the floor. However, I didn't use, you can see there's still these light sources here. They're still turned off. I just left them here for the sake of like maybe you want to try out something. Um, I think it's better if you can to do it with emissive. And there's also something interesting for you to know. By the way, let me just dock my windows again here. Yeah, like this. Um, so just interesting to know. Um, you can see the emissive amount is 1. You can also see that it doesn't really look like it's like illuminated. I mean, it kind of like does because it doesn't get affected by lighting, right? So you can see this is the shadowed side of the sphere and it still looks the same brightness. So it kind of like is illuminated. However, it doesn't really look like this, right? So this gives you more of the feeling of like, yeah, this is actually illuminated. But the problem there is that is actually, it has a lot to do with like exposure and all these things. Usually people have wrong exposure, which is why they tweak the emissive to have like ridiculous amounts. And what I would like to show you, what is important to understand is that when you use the emissive for baking the lighting actually, um, the the intensity of the light is the emissive intensity, right? So the emissive intensity also says how much the light can travel here on that wall, right? And as you can see, this still looks like there is light behind it, and that is because of the exposure. And you can see that it doesn't really bleed over the whole wall, the whole lighting. It just gives this nice subtle little gradient here, right? And that is kind of like what you would want to have. I mean, of course, you can strengthen it and increase it depending on what you would like as a look. But I think this looks more natural. So if you would basically tweak the emissive so much so that you would really get a glow effect here, that gradient would probably be over the whole wall. So you just have to be very careful with how strong you actually make it, because the visual look of the emissive and the actual contribution of light, they are tied together and they have an impact on each other. And if you think that your emissive is doing too much lighting on the scene, then you need to lower the emissive amount, and then you might feel that it's not giving you enough bloom anymore. It doesn't look illuminated enough anymore, the actual surface. And then you might want to actually touch your exposure and your bloom settings to kind of like work nicely in conjunction with each other. So that is all like a balancing act. There is a downside I found out to using Emissive. And I actually did a little bit of testing. I haven't completely eliminated the problem, which is also why this is not a full bake quality, because I was just like trying to fix a couple of things. But again, I think it's enough to illustrate what we're doing here. And that is, can you see these lines here in the ceiling? Like we got like this weird line here and this weird line here, and we have the same thing over here, and we actually have the same thing over here too. And that is not from reflection volumes or anything like that. So what I did was I turned on the emissive on these surfaces, but I also did something else. I went into the world settings and I enabled the ambient occlusion from light mass, and I enabled generate ambient occlusion material mask. And I'm going to explain to you why I did that. So first of all, you can see here around the picture frames, we get some artifacting a little bit from the AO that I turned on. So one, you can see like this is more pronounced up here, and that is kind of like the shadowing that is coming from the emissive surface. However, there's also some shadowing here, and that is from the ambient occlusion. It is not extremely accurate, but it could be if I would have baked with higher settings. You can see it looks a bit better on this side here, where there's more skylighting actually coming in. So this looks a lot better here. Gets solved together with the skylight. Here it doesn't really. So that would be a lot better if we would just increase the bake quality. And what I mean by that is, I mean, I keep these settings here, but what you are looking at right now is a bake that was baked with medium quality. And it actually does look way better than usual medium because of the values that I have in the light mass settings. However, all these problems here with these picture frames, they would be gone if I would just switch to production, but then it takes like, I don't know, 4 hours for me to bake that. And I was iterating on trying to getting some results for you, so I think having medium is actually a nice trade-off. So again, so that is caused by the ambient occlusion being turned on in conjunction with having the emissive turned on here as well, because you can see like we get some AO here, but here in this spot, I'm not sure if it is that, but that is my experience, is kind of like suggesting it might be that. It's basically like we have this corner here, and in this corner we theoretically have a lot more photons kind of like being emitted and maybe having an impact on that spot than we have on the straight line here, because here it's only from this section where it can affect, but here there's like it's kind of like a more concentrated spot, and maybe that has an impact here on how the ambient occlusion gets baked. And so you would need to just fiddle a bit around with like some more settings and getting rid of that. Otherwise, you could just turn off this emissive and just re-enable these tube lights, and it will pretty much have the same effect, and you will get rid of these artifacts up here. So what else did I do? I reworked the floor a bit towards something that I think works a lot better with the setting here. It just looks way less gamey, I think. I almost completely, I think if I look like this, I think I killed the normal map completely because I just wasn't happy with it, and I did not really have any like time, or I didn't really want to like go too much into the texturing part, because I mean this is still the Lighting Academy, and you can spend so much time on reworking the texturing stuff and all that. I mean that is like a science on its own, and it's just really like too much for what we are doing here. I mean, like sometimes I like to go into it, but I can't make like the perfect floor material inside one of our sessions here. So I changed that, and what you might see is like there's a lot of SSR stuff still going on, which is good. I also allowed a bit more roughness on the SSR. However, what you can see is, and we talked about that, I made it so like before the floor was so reflective, it felt weird that the SSR were kind of like having troubles with the benches because the benches are having these like thin geometry. And so remember in one of the sessions I said, I think we should make the floor rougher so we actually get a little bit less perfect contact reflection, so it kind of like fools the brain on thinking like, yeah, that actually doesn't look too bad, it doesn't look too wrong. um, and and I just think that that helps a lot. Also, I did something else, and I want to show that to you. So I'm actually not fully yet done with the floor material, but I thought it was fun to do it all together. So I showed you that I used the ambient occlusion mask, and I used this generate ambient occlusion material mask. And I like doing that because you can do quite a lot of cool things with that ambient occlusion mask. Um, so I'm gonna show you what you can do. So this is my floor material here, right? And I just really like, this was all the mess that I had before, right? And I just got really annoyed and fed up by this. So what I basically did was I just like took some new textures and I just like rebalanced the roughness in Photoshop. And I just like made it so that it just, yeah, you can see there is no normal map yet. It's just like really, really simple stuff. But I think it looks so much better than what we had before. And now the goal is to, and sorry, this also shows you, dude, you don't always have to do crazy stuff. Like, this looks so much better than what we had before, and it's nothing. It's a diffuse texture, and it's a roughness texture, and that's all it is. Nothing else. There is no masking, there's no variation, and it's also, I just made the texture to be as generic as possible. And so even though if we go on the instance, you can see I have a tiling of 20, you don't see it. You just don't see it. That this texture is repeating all over, and that is because it is so generic. If you just look at this, I mean, yeah, you can see some repetition here, but the texture is so generic, and that is actually very good because the more generic it is, the less you have issues with tiling and all that stuff. But anyways, floor. So we got this cool node here in Unreal, which is called Precomputed AO Mask, and that is exactly the node that we want. And what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to plug that into base color so you can see what it actually does. I'm going to hit apply here. And I'm going to go to the buffer visualization, I'm going to go to base color. So now you can see we get this. And the cool thing is, it's basically, this is like baked into the light map data, kind of, right? So it's like, I think it's actually it is an extra texture sample, but it uses the UVs from the light map data, and it's basically per object, right? So it's like all this baked lighting information available for per object texture manipulation, right? So this is our AO mask that we got here from the bake. And what I would like to do is I would basically just like to use that and to lerp between like a couple of values. So what I'm gonna do first is I'm gonna make a breakup mask. So what we can do here is we can search for the height lerp. And the height lerp is basically allowing me to lerp between the black part and the white part in the texture, but use a height map to break up the transition phase so it's not giving us the smooth gradient. So what we're gonna do now is we're gonna say the transition phase, that is the mask, right? So that is basically showing the transition from black to white, right? That is the pre-computed AO mask is doing that. And then we need a height texture to kind of break that up, right? So, and I'm gonna use the alpha to put into the base color, and it's gonna complain because we need the height texture input. And for that, let's just see. I mean, I don't know what we will use yet, but let's just have a look here on what we could use. I mean, we could try something like this. The thing is here, I mean, again, I don't have any textures really available yet. So what I want to do is basically, I actually want to make these places a bit more dusty. And what you would kind of want to have is you would want to have a breakup mask that has some sort of like structure in it that could maybe be like just some dusty stuff, you know, like. But I think I'm just gonna go with this one now. Let's see. I mean, again, like this is more for illustrative purpose because yeah, I just don't have all the textures that I would need to make everything look really, really good now. So let's just see about that. What happens when we do this? So that is fairly interesting. I'm just I'm just gonna quickly fool around a bit now with different texture types just to see what happens because it has a quite a strong effect on the blend is like the ratio between black and white. So as you can see now. Okay. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna of course I'm actually just gonna copy this and call it tiling 2. That's okay. Sheesh. We're gonna multiply these together and gonna put that in here and let's not use the same tiling as the floor texture. So you can already see like this is kind of like what we get when we break that stuff up, right? I'm actually let's try the other texture again quickly. So now you can see that this texture has a lot quite a different range. So what we can do is oops, let's put that back into the contrast. Convert it to a parameter. We say hide lerp contrast. Whoop, sorry. So now the interesting thing is that we get like all this, and this is kind of like cool, but like why is it so small? And that is because of the mask power we're basically feeding in. So what we can do is we can just add a power node, plug it into the transition phase, and we can just copy this one again here, drop it into the exponent, and we can say hide lerp power. Let's just save it, and it's probably gonna, whoa, yeah, let's just call it W. Hide lerp power. So and that lets us control the actual contrast of the mask. So if we just go into the power node now, it's like we can basically like grow that stuff, right? That's pretty cool. And then we can also, together with the contrast, do all sorts of things here. So I think what I would like to do is something like this. So, I mean, I'm not really happy with this texture because like these blends, you know, they become good or bad uh, based on the textures that you're using. But this is really just for an example purpose. Let's call it that. Okay. So now that we got that, we need to do something with it. So what I'm gonna do is uh, I'm gonna use a lerp here and here, and A is black, like this, and B is white. So I'm just gonna drop the alpha into here, and we're gonna put this into base color, and we're gonna put this one, whoops, into roughness. And so basically what I'm gonna do is fairly simple, just gonna copy this one. Actually no, I'm gonna do this like this. Oops, clamp. So I'm really just building that specific purpose that I want to have for this function here now. So I don't build any options in this. So I just really want to make the diffuse a bit brighter, and that's all I care for right now. I'm not gonna hook up colors or anything like that. So we just call this base color. Whoops. Base color brightness, and we're gonna make this value 1, and we're just gonna take that one and multiply it, and we say we call it the roughness multiplier. Okay. So now let's see what we get here. So now you can basically see nothing because the values are basically set in a way that doesn't do anything. So now if I increase the roughness multiplier, oh, I forgot. You always wanna clamp these values because you don't really want them to go above 1. So just clamp the values. So what we can now do is let's look like this. So now we can actually brighten the diffuse a bit, or well, just multiply all the colors up here a bit like crazy, and you can see like some of that doesn't look good obviously, and because that is like, again, that's really the mask. It's just really, it comes down to like masking of those things like properly, right? So what you want to do is you kind of want to have a tiny little bit of difference in color, just a tiny little bit. And now what you want to do is you want to go into the roughness and start like adding this subtle variation. Just gonna move that out of the way. So of course, again, it's not that nice right now actually, But that is really just for illustrative. Here, like I think this works quite okay here, where you can see that there is like here. You can just see, okay, there is something going on here. And you also might wanna, that's the height lamp contrast. I wanna use the mask power. You might wanna get something more like this. Yeah. So now you can see we have a lot more interesting variation going on in the floor. We have like parts that are more reflective and we have other parts that are less so. And it kind of like becomes less reflective towards the borders here. Um, so that is actually quite a good way of getting some nice uh, variation into things. And of course you can like fool around with the colors even more. I mean, you can also do like the opposite, right? I mean, just like make it even darker. And you can see like this doesn't really look nice, but again, that is that's the mask. That is not fully looking the way we want it to be. We just need like a lot more texture fidelity there, different texture inputs in that sense. So we can kind of like have that a bit better. So, okay, but I think this is a really good way. And for the people of you that actually are playing Battlefront 2, this technique, I actually used it on Starkiller Base. So in Starkiller Base, you have a very reflective floor, and we also can put out some ambient occlusion masking. We used it heavily just to get like this little bit more definition around certain objects and all that. So it's quite a cool thing to do and to use, and it actually can increase the quality a lot, given that you have the proper textures. So, um, what else did I do? So you can see that there's no more weird sky outside, and that is because I got rid of it. So you can now see it's just like normal sky. I did that because eventually we kind of care, right? I mean, eventually we want to see uh, the sky and not like, if you remember here, we saw like these trees and we saw like some stuff from the cube map. And if you look at the other side, you could see like the building and all that. I mean, you don't want that. However, I'm still using that HDR for lighting the scene. So what exactly am I doing and how am I doing it? And I'm going to show you. So if we go to the skylight, whoops. God damn. I have a new keyboard. It's a mechanical keyboard, Corsair. I fucking love it. It's great. But damn, those mechanical keys, they're so sensitive. I'm constantly pressing shit and I don't want it to. So please excuse me if I write weird and stupid stuff. I'm just still not fully used to the mechanical keyboard. Okay, so before, what we did was we mapped the HDR into the sky dome, and then we let the cube, the sky light capture it. I told you in one of the videos that I'm probably gonna change that, and so now I did. So we basically we still use this image to light the scene, but we're just not having it on the sky dome. So what we're gonna do is like it's quite cool. So we switch to specified cube map and we put in the HDR, right? So now the problem is like we get the lighting from the HDR, but it's like we don't have that impact anymore on like when we rotate the sky dome to kind of like place the HDR in the way we want to place it, right? Um, and so you're like, how do I make this work? I mean, do I now rotate my geometry or something like that? It's like, of course not. Um, so so what I basically did was I brought back the normal sky dome, and that one is not captured. That one is just really only visible for like in the scene. You know, like you want to get that nice sky. But for the actual lighting and rendering, I still use that cube map. So what I did was to get the same thing as before. Whoops, did I change something? Yeah, I did not mean to do that. This one here. So you have the source cube map angle. And the trick that I used is basically this. It's fairly simple. So I just went out here. I went into the reflections view mode. I also adjusted the exposure a bit, of course, so it's not that bloomy. But what you can see now is you can see the environment reflecting on the building, right? And so what I did, and I need to kill the screen space reflections now because now we're getting like all this stuff here is the screen space reflections reflecting the bright sky now, right? So it's kind of like overriding the reflection of the cube map. So what you're gonna do is you're gonna go to lighting features, screen space reflections, and you turn them off. Okay. So now you can see if you just move on like that, you can see here is the tree that was basically here on the sky, and here's the building that was like here to the left. So what I did was I took a screenshot of the old setup like this, and I saw, okay, this is how the reflection needs to look like when the cube map on the sky is rotated like that. And then I just rotated the cube map inside the skylight until it looked like that again. So pretty simple fix for that. So now I have the same rotation as I did before, but without actually having the sky to be rendered like that. Let's just turn back on the screen space reflections here and go out of the reflection mode. So that's how I did it. That's how I brought this together. So yeah, I mean, this is kind of like the thing now. I actually quite happy with the way it all turned out. So this looks a bit better, I think. Um, so yeah, I think this is it's a pretty good improvement to the overall scene here, and I hope you guys were able to like get something out of this, and also like just experiment with things and try things out. And I mean, like for the floor, we could also just like vertex paint some of it. I mean, but the thing is, like the floor doesn't have enough resolution, I think. So I would have needed to export the model and subdivide it a bit more so we can vertex paint it. But again, that's also not really part of this. Um, but yeah, I mean, we did quite a few things to this scene, and I mean, like, I think if we just take like this for example, right? If we just look at this, and we just take this as a shot, and then we look at well, maybe not this one, but maybe this. So you can see like this is before, and this is after. Um, and I would argue we were able to greatly improve the scene. Also interesting, we have the volumetric light maps now. So, boop, here it is. That's the volumetric light map, and I mean, I think you can see it. I I think like these ones, like the little plants, I think they look a lot better. Like, I mean, this looks. Oh, oh. What is wrong with this one? Texture sample type is color, should be linear. Floor roughness. What? Why? What is wrong? Texture sample alpha is. Yeah. Okay. No, that is wrong. Yeah, because like when you turn off sRGB, then it kind of like it expects linear color space, and sometimes the sampler nodes they don't like because I changed the color space of the texture, but I didn't double check the material, and sometimes the samplers they don't update, and if you have color and you turn off sRGB, it throws an error because it's not a linear color. The node is expecting sRGB, but you're feeding in linear color. So sometimes you just have to manually switch that. And now we should get our grass back. Yes, there it is. Well, I mean, we can, the colors are very off now here. You can see that. That's nothing like grass colors. Also, I can see something very interesting. And I think many people will probably be very thankful for what I'm going to show them now. It's actually quite sad that I have to show this in this scene because that scene is actually not really meant for this stuff anyways. So people most likely will not people that have the problem that I'm going to solve now will most likely not know because they won't watch these videos since they're maybe not doing like ArcVis stuff. Anyways, do you see the ugly stuff that we're getting here from the movement? That is because we have a masked material that has vertex animation and we're using temporal anti-aliasing. So you can see when the grass moves, it kinda the temporal AA doesn't really understand that, and that is why it starts getting this super weird flickery look and this really weird morphing effect. It actually looks a lot worse when you have more complex vertex animation, so that is not really a very nice grass vertex animation. Um, and what you have to do to fix that is you need so you kind of like need to know a little bit what temporal anti-aliasing does. I'm not going to go into details here. But what I'm going to say is temporal anti-aliasing reuses results from past frames and blends them together. And to do that, it needs to kind of like know where things are moving towards. So, because otherwise there can be like discrepancies, right? So it needs to have some sort of like history buffer where it knows like, okay, so that stuff has been there and now it's here. And it also needs to kind of anticipate where it's going to move over the frame to like have less artifacts. And there's a technique, it's called motion vectors. And motion vectors are extremely important for TAA because they basically help with showing where is something moving towards to and what's like kind of like the destination it's going to end up at over a couple of frames. And per default, Unreal doesn't render motion vectors for masked materials that use vertex offset, which is like the vertex animation we have here. So what you need to do is you need to go into the project settings. You need to go to rendering, and let's see where it was. Where was it? Let's search for it. So we search for veloc advanced config, contest position, extension rendering. So here, okay, under optimizations. So it's like engine rendering, like we were just where, and then it's in optimizations. So, and here we have accurate velocity from vertex deformation. Enables materials with time-based world position offset and/or world displacement to output accurate velocities. This incurs a performance cost. If it's disabled, those material will not output velocities, and without those velocities, TAA is gonna look a lot worse. So the problem now is I need to restart my editor. Why
Go
am
to
I?
lighting only.
Whoa!
Let's
Why?
have a look and analyze our.
Why is, oh yeah, okay, there was a hidden, this is like weird. Chrome sometimes has like a hidden window here telling me like, hey, someone commented on your YouTube stuff, and then you click on like restart later and you actually click the YouTube thingy. So yeah, I'm not gonna do this right now. But if you click that box and you restart, all your vertex animated stuff will write into the motion vectors correctly and it will not look that messy. And it's really, really important that you do that when you work with vegetation. So outdoor scenes and all that, they need to have that. And Epic actually implemented that feature for the kite demo. So it's there since the kite demo because they had so much vegetation, it would have had looked really, really bad without that. Okay, but yeah, again, like I just wanted to quickly show, like this stuff looks quite better now with the volumetric light maps than it did before with the samples. And so yeah, that is it. That is it for this scene. Um, I hope it's okay that I'm closing it off like this. And yeah, I also hope it was a good session and you were still able to learn a couple of cool little things here. With that said, I want to give you a small little tease because, yeah, sorry, I like to do that. Um, I don't yet know when exactly because it's so hard. Like, if I always commit on time frames and so on, people are gonna just ask tons of questions on why it didn't happen yet. So I'm gonna say, like, I don't know yet when, huh? But soonish, I'm gonna have the next thing available. And that's actually gonna be quite cool. You might note it. And it's this one. So I was contacted by Benjamin Roach. He's an environment artist at From Software, and he built this Dark Souls 3 environment in Unreal 4. You might have seen the scene, you might have watched the video and all that, and you probably have read the article on 80 level. And if you didn't, you should, because 80 level, Kirill and his friends, great guys, and they're really, really helping the community a huge part with all their articles and just like, you know, generating exposure for people, but also like really having some very, very good articles and interviews with people from the industry. And so Benjamin was part of that too. I also have been part of that level 80 interview stuff. So it's like always good, you know, to share that and I mean like it's the games industry, right? So I mean people are like kind of like old friends anyways. Like everyone kind of knows everyone and most people have worked together and shared experiences and one got like the interview here and then the other one enabled someone else an interview there. It's like yeah, there's a I mean it is growing, but still it's fairly small so people just know each other. And anyways, so go and read that article. It's really good. And obviously the work from Benjamin is also very, very good. It's a really nice scene. And yeah, like I mean we got this little video clip here of it. And so I'm gonna mute that. Uh, And yeah, I mean we're gonna work with that environment. And I didn't get any kind of like references. So it's you know, we basically it's just like make it look as great as you can. So there's not like, hey, I worked based on this thing and it really needs to do like this or that. So my idea is to make this look as good as possible, make it look a lot more realistic and defined. But I also want to somehow stay true, obviously, to the mood and feel of Dark Souls or the environment in general. And we're gonna do lots of cool stuff. I mean, we're gonna work with 4.18, so we're gonna use volumetric lighting for this quite a bit. So that's gonna be cool. Um, we're gonna use the physical FFT bloom. And we're just, you know, we're gonna try to take advantage of all the new features that we have here in the engine. There's a lot of vegetation in here. I don't know yet how we're gonna do the vegetation. We might end up using the volumetric light maps for vegetation, or we might actually use light maps for it and bake it. It all depends a little bit on how we will set up this scene. When we look at some of these things here, we can already see that um, I think there's a bit of a lack of contrast in quite a few shots here. So we're gonna work with that, and I think it's gonna be pretty neat working on this scene and trying to improve it. So yeah, that's it for today. Um, Again, sorry for all the delays and the struggles and the troubles and all that stuff. Trying to do better in the future. Also, many people have been asking me like, "Hey, man, your stuff is really, really great. Can we somehow give you some money for it?" I just want to quickly say to that, it is not that easy since I'm employed full time for EA, and it's just like corporate stuff. It's just never really, you have to figure things out, and I need to get permission and yada yada. So just so you guys know, I mean, I don't really care about making money in that sense because I'm not doing it for the sake of money. I'm doing this for you guys and because I love doing it. But obviously, I think it's cool if you can make a few bucks and if people appreciate what I can give to them with my knowledge. Of course, I'm happy to get a little bit of something back. So I will continue doing these even if they're gonna stay for free or whatever. So that is, I'm not doing this to get paid. However, I am working towards getting something like Patreon or maybe even like just monetize the videos via YouTube or something like that, whatever. I don't know yet. And I hear you. I actually, I'm super thankful, and I think this is so great that you as a community appreciate my content so much that you have been asking me, pressuring me almost, like, dude, where can I throw you some money because your content is so good. So I'm hearing you, and I think this is really, really great. Thank you for that. And I will try to get a system in place where you can support me a little bit. I just don't know yet when that's going to happen and how it's going to play out, but I'm on it. So yeah, again, thank you all for your support and your dedication, and thanks to community for also providing the scene and scenes, and also thanks for being so patient. I mean, again, I'm I'm very busy and I have a family too, and it's not my main focus is making video tutorials. I just do it because I like it. And so yeah, but I'm sorry if sometimes it takes longer than anticipated for me to release new content. All right, cool. I'm done talking now. Have a great time, everyone, and yeah, see you on the next session. Bye bye.